Hi everyone, we are going to continue Module 4 on page 195, getting started with Excel charts. If you haven't watched the first part of Module 4, Session 1, I recommend checking it out. That was about payment calculation. It's the video that has the hot dog car. And if you have watched it and we're continuing, welcome. Let's keep on going. So let's take a look at this sample data. So I have a few people. 5 people in my group. We had an ice cream eating contest, and everybody ate a different amount of ice cream. And I want to make a chart showing that ice cream. So, super simple. Of course, in Excel, like everything in Excel, there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. We're going to talk about a few of them. First, I'm going to go and grab the data, click down here for quick analysis, and click on charts. Okay, so right away it's going to figure out, it's going to ask me what kind of chart do I want? Do I want a cluster chart? Do I want a pie chart? Do I want a chart that looks like this, right? A bar chart. And there's many other options. If I press more, I can go down this list and I can look at all the different options of which one makes sense. Now, keep in mind that some types of information are better understood using certain kinds of images. Some of them, like if I showed you this image and I said, look how much ice cream we had, it doesn't really make sense in this context, right? Whereas this one, a tree map, actually does. It shows like relative sizes. That might be a little hard to gauge because we're not really sure how big each box is, but it's the same idea as a pie chart, right? So we see the pie chart, we can see the segments, but we're not really 100% sure how big they are. Okay, so let's do an example, and we can actually use a tree map for this. There's many other options, right, if you look through these. For our purposes, let's go with tree map. That's going to look like this, and we'll press OK. Okay, now before we do anything else, let's look back at our data. On the right-hand side where it says name, it's in purple, and the ice cream is in blue because it figured out based on our selection that those are the two categories we want. So all of the names are in the legends, and the numbers are what determines the boxes. As we get into more complicated charts, we could switch those. So for example, the numbers are across the top and the names are at the bottom. Or we could use different types of data with a big data set, a big table, to create more complex graphs. But for now, we'll start easy. We'll take a look at some of the features. On page 196, in figure 4.5, you could look at the different types of charts. And we are now where it says creating the data source on page 198, 197, 198. Okay, so let's get rid of this for a moment, and let's look at another way to create it. I'm going to grab the numbers again, just like this. I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to pick Chart. I could pick one of the pictures here. There's many different kinds. I could press Recommended Charts and get that screen that we had before popped up based on our data. So we could pick Pie Chart, press OK. It drops it in there. As soon as it does, you'll notice this new part opens on the right-hand side where it says Chart Tools. There's Design Tools, where we could pick a certain look for our chart. And we could change the colors based on different color schemes. We could have quick layout, so we could change many different options that we're going to look at in a moment. And we could also add chart elements, like we could put a title above or below. We could add data labels in the center, on the outside, best fit, or data callouts with percentages. And we could also put a legend, which tells us that's where it says Bob, Mo, Sue, Marshall, and Audra, letting us know what is in the chart. So many of these are design considerations. We'll keep it simple. Let's pick, I'll pick this one. Okay, and I'm going to make the chart title Ice Cream Contest. All right. Okay, so it's a little confusing because of the, there we go. Okay, so now I have the idea of what each segment is worth, how big they are. Because Audra's 25 and Mo's 20, visually it might be hard to do that, but this could help. Okay, so we've done the quick analysis using this button here at the bottom under charts. And we've also gone to insert and picked a chart from up here. Okay, they do the exact same thing. Okay, so let's take a closer look at our chart. First of all, if we click on the chart, you'll notice like here on the left-hand side, it highlights the boxes that it's pulling data from, like we discussed. But we also have these three buttons that show up on the side. We have chart filters, chart styles, and we could add chart elements. So let's start off with chart filters. We can press chart filter, and it says it's getting the data from series 1, which is our numbers, the only data that we have. And as far as categories go, how do we divide those? Are by these. Let's say we want to make a chart, but we didn't want Sue to be part of it. So either we could select two ranges on the top and the bottom that are non-adjacent, or we could just uncheck Sue, and then she'll disappear from the chart. Or will she? That was supposed to work. Okay, I figured it out. What you do is you click on here, we uncheck Sue, and then we press apply. The problem was I wasn't pressing apply. But if we did that, then it will change the graph. Okay, so I'll press Sue again, press apply, it redistributes the chart. We could also pick, now sometimes this is really complicated because we could have multiple columns that we think are the titles, right? Are they horizontal? Are they vertical? Like what do we want? Do we want name and ice cream to be our categories, or do we want these to be our categories? So here we're able to pick, do we want column A as our names or something else? In our case, we have a small data set, so it's only giving us these options. But as we have more complicated data, we'll see many more options. Here we can choose style and color, just like we did up at the top under design. And here we could choose chart title. We could pick data labels and legend, just like we did in here. Now the other option up on Chart Tools is Format. We could change what the squares look like. We could change the font. We could change the color, and so on. Okay, so there's a lot of options. We could change the size and so on. Now it's important to know that when you click on the graphic, you're able to resize it. And we're also able to copy this and paste it into, let's say, a Microsoft Word document, either as a picture or as a linked object to this data. Now, of course, just like everything else we do, if we change the data, it will automatically change as well, right? If the numbers change where it's getting data from, because this is basically a representation of our data. And as we move on in the course, we're going to look at doing dashboards, basically data summaries, like I'm sure you've seen from the business plan example, that are reliant on the underlying data. So as we change the data, the tables and the charts will update automatically. But maybe this works, but it's not exactly what we want. We can go to where it says change chart type. So I just went onto the chart, I right-clicked it, and I went where it says change chart type. And it goes back into the beginning dialog that we had and allows me to change the style into something else, maybe something that works a little better and helps us describe the kind of data that we have. And you'll see it won't work necessarily with all kinds of data because we don't have enough numbers in here. But depending on what our needs are and what we're trying to describe, this could be, a good idea, depending. For Series 1, I'd probably rename this to ice cream, right, or scoops of ice cream. And this will give us the ability to, put together the data in this manner. So we're just going forward. We talked about chart labels like we did up here, and we talked about Series 1. We could add, like over here, we could add other ones as well. And that is on page 205. And let's keep on rocking. Okay, so it's also possible to move around the labels. Like if I want to move Audra inside the square, I can. This is obviously not the right kind of square for that particular thing because this is a callout box, but I could play around with it. I could change it up here into a different type of shape or a different kind of style in order to change the box, as well as I could pick a different design style from up here. Maybe this would be more conducive to what I'm trying to do, right? So there's a lot of different options. And again, just like everything else, we can go to where it says in the bottom, select data to click the data. We can move the chart, and we could click on Format Chart Area. And here it opens up a bunch of options that allow us to customize the chart. So we could change the fill, like the background. We could change the border if there is going to be one. In this case, there is none. We could set the transparency, which is sometimes important depending on where you're using it. We also could change the text and add effects to it. Okay, so there's a lot of different options how we could format our chart. Okay, so if you look at the text on page 208, you'll see they talk about performing a what-if analysis, and that's basically what we did before when we clicked here and we edited the square. So let's say I said, for example, what would the distribution look like if I got rid of Marshall? It would look like this, okay? Or we could also do that by changing the numbers and saying like, oh, I wonder what would happen if Bob, ate 20 scoops of ice cream. What would the distribution look like? So that sort of gives you an idea of the what-if analysis, and we talked about filtering on page 209 and 209. Okay, so I'm going to put our chart off to the side for a second, and we're going to create a column chart. So I'll go back and grab the data that we're going to put into a chart. I'll go to Insert and select Column Chart. We could do, again, 3D, 2D, etc. I'm going to stick with the plain, regular ice cream style. That's just for the name for this. It's not actually the name. Okay, and then here I have my column. Now, if I go into Quick Layout, I could see a number of styles, like what it looks like. For example, this would tell me the actual number, and we could put a percentage in as well. I could put the number on the outside, on the inside, on the top, etc. I could also look at many different chart elements of where I want to put the axes titles. So for example, here I put contest, and here I put number of scoops eaten. I could put data labels. So they're a little hard to see, but here I could, like, for example, put what the numbers actually are. And keep in mind that sometimes when you're doing a chart, these numbers on the side, the legend, might be difficult to figure out, like, what's the difference between this and this? There's actually only one space, and between here and here is two spaces, but if you have many numbers, it could be very deceiving. So that's why it's good to always put these numbers in to help you figure out what they are. Now, the legend, we don't really need that. The legend key at the bottom, although we could have it to tell us what the numbers are. When we deal with more complicated data, we could put in error bars to put in standard deviations and stuff like that. We don't have that right now because we only have one set of numbers. We could put in different types of grids behind the numbers. You see they're changing. And we could put different legends, right? Describing. So for now, we'll just press none because we know what series 1 is ice cream, basically. Okay, and that brings us to figure 4.17 on page 210.